Oh, Arsenal win again. And I have to say, it's so annoying that Arsenal continuously win, but they are on 27 points after 12 games, which is pretty good. Joint top, but Man City do have a game in hand. And if you consider all the injuries Arsenal have had, fair play to them. It's so infuriating that Arsenal always win, because even when they're not at their best, and even though they destroyed Burnley today and it was a convincing win, it's like I felt like Arsenal didn't even get out of second gear, yet they were so comfortable and so good against Burnley that it just made me jealous as a rival fan. How it was just easy for them. It was like, okay, like Arsenal winning 3-1 and they're not even playing like their best, but they're playing really well. And I'm just like, oh, do you know what I mean? But let's actually talk about the game, because I thought Trossard was phenomenal. We're going to talk about Trossard, a guy that I thought was a good player at Brighton, but I was like, oh, like I don't know if he's Arsenal level. When Arsenal missed out on Mudryk, I was like, okay, Trossard's a decent player, but I don't know if he's Arsenal level. When you look at his goals and assists per minute ratio, what he adds to Arsenal and just his all-round ability, he's been phenomenal for them. I thought Zinchenko was incredible, and what Zinchenko did so well was he kind of utilised his positioning really well. He sometimes inverts into midfield and adds an extra body to midfield, and he sometimes goes out wide to stretch the width, but his decision-making I thought was really good. I thought Tomiyasu had a great game, and then do we even need to talk about Declan Rice? Because when does Declan Rice have a bad game? And as a Man United fan, there's one thing I've always said, and someone said to me, one thing you changed about Man United this season, and I said I would have gone for Declan Rice this summer. I don't think Declan Rice is a bad game for United. I said this when someone asked me yesterday on a podcast what I'd have changed about Man United. I said I would have gone for Declan Rice in the summer, because he has been absolutely phenomenal. But let's talk about Trossard. For me, I think he's man of the match. He got a goal, he got an assist, he's got 19 goal contributions since joining Arsenal this season. And you've also got to take into account that he's not started a lot of games. I think he's pretty much averaging statistically like a goal and assist per game. And it's not just about goals and assists, it's about the runs Trossard makes, what he does off the ball, what he does on the ball, his all-round game. But he has been phenomenal for Arsenal, and I believe he's their joint top goal scorer this season. He has 6 goals in almost 600 minutes this season, so pretty much a goal every 100 minutes. And you've got to think, 21 million last summer. I laughed at Arsenal when they missed out on Mudryk. I was like, Lolo, you've missed out on Mudryk. You know, you've been tweeting about Mudryk that you're going to sign him, but it was a blessing in disguise for Arsenal. Absolute blessing in disguise getting Trossard instead of Mudryk, because he's levels ahead of Mudryk. Now, I actually think Mudryk will become a lot better at Chelsea, but there's a phenomenal player in Trossard. And if we look at his statistics here, I'm going to show you his match statistics before I dive into Arsenal in general. But it was said here, 15 touches in the opponent's box, 8 crosses, 4 duels won, 3 shots, 2 shots on target, 2 chances, created a goal and assist. He was great today. 8 crosses, 3 shots, 2 chances created, goal and assist. And I think he's probably, with Jesus out, he's probably most effective in that 9 role ahead of Nketiah. I think it's hard to judge because Nketiah gets a hat-trick versus Sheffield United. You're like, boom, but then Nketiah is poor in the big games, and Burnley is a team like Sheffield United where they're not a great side. So you can say, okay, Trossard was so much better than Nketiah this game, but Nketiah was really good in that Sheffield United game. But I do think all in all, Arsenal, and particularly Martinelli and particularly Saka, I think Arsenal's front three feel more connected with Trossard playing ahead of Nketiah. I think that Trossard just seems to be more of a general threat. Now, I do think Nketiah is a decent player. I don't think he's as bad as some Arsenal fans make out, like he scores goals, but I think Nketiah is like that bench player. And when you are Arsenal, when you want to push for the league and when you want to win the league, you need someone that you're like, yeah, this guy could be a regular starter for my club. And I think Trossard is probably the perfect bench player in terms of his versatility to play left wing, to play centre forward, but I think he's an improvement on Nketiah as well. And if you look at the league table right now, Arsenal are equal in points with Man City, and it's really infuriating because even though Man United won today, we're just beating Luton 1-0. It's so boring. And I see Arsenal fans not super happy and a bit critical with their defeat of the Burnley. And I'm like, you didn't get out of second gear, which I get maybe frustrated Arsenal people. I think in the first half, there was moments where it was a little bit poor, but I was like, Arsenal won that game with so much ease and they won 3-1. They scored 3 goals. It was very inevitable that Arsenal were going to win that game easily. Yes, maybe the players could have moved more off the ball. Maybe there could have been a bit quicker movement. And I think the one criticism I have of Arsenal this season, as a neutral watching them, is I think their problem is they've struggled a bit more against low blocks this season compared to last season. And I think they maybe sometimes taking a bit too many touches on the ball, if that makes sense. Maybe there needs to be a little bit more movement off the ball and a little bit less touch on the ball. I feel like they maybe try and overcomplicate it because they're so comfortable in possession, but maybe they take that 1 or 2 touches too many, whereas that makes them move the ball a bit slower. But I don't think there's much to be critical about Arsenal. I know people have been critical about them this season and said they've not been as good this season as last season, and they've kind of struggled to break down that low block. But I don't really get the Arsenal criticism at the moment. I think that they've winning games. They're on 27 points. They've had all these injuries. Had Partey been there, had Odegaard been there, had they not had all these injuries, that's something they've struggled with this season. And as a Man United fan, we've had 21 injuries in 16 games at Man United, and it's not an excuse for how bad Man United have been this season, but it does disrupt momentum. We've seen Spurs now lose 2 games in a row. People don't realise that Arsenal were quite lucky with injuries last season until they lost Saliba, which is when they kind of collapsed. That, while maybe it's not the best of Arsenal you've seen, they're winning 3-1, they're winning comfortably, they're getting the points, they're looking good, and they've got these injuries. And you have to give Arteta credit, you have to give Arsenal credit. But a guy that definitely deserves a lot of credit, and he's not a footballer I'm a big fan of, but it is Zinchenko. 116 touches, 45 passes into the final third, 17 final third entries, 14 duels won, most aerial duels, most tackles. He was everywhere. And I can't believe it's actually taken me 5 minutes into the video to talk about Zinchenko, because I think you could argue Zinchenko was probably better than Trossard, because I think Trossard gets the goals and the assists, but Zinchenko got a goal. I think it's between Zinchenko and Trossard for man of the match, but Zinchenko was incredible. And what Zinchenko did so well was he kind of got in midfield, he got involved with the play, he was like everywhere, but he was at left back when he needed to be left back, he was going wide when he needed to be wide, he was involved when he needed to be involved. And I think that's what he did so well. And I think in the first half, when Arsenal, I don't think we're at their best in the first half, and their build-up was a little bit slow, and they were trying to switch the ball a lot. I think that Zinchenko coming into that second half really grew and helped with build-up, and I think he gave them a bit more intensity. Sometimes I think that Jorginho and Rice pivot has worked really well, and I think that's because Rice is so good. But I do think that Partey would complement Rice a lot better than Jorginho. And I sometimes look at Arsenal, I do think maybe they miss Xhaka's energy in midfield. I see a lot of criticism of Kai Havertz. And I think for a Kai Havertz game, it wasn't awful, but I think Kai Havertz just looks a level below the rest of the Arsenal squad, I would say that. Same with Fabio Vieira, who some Arsenal fans were celebrating that he got a 3-match ban. I think with Fabio Vieira and Kai Havertz, I don't think they're bad players, but I think there's a level of quality at Arsenal, and they're just not quite there. Declan Rice is just like this elite level of quality, and even Jorginho is not a bad player, but there is a little bit of a drop off there. But all in all, I think Zinchenko, you could very much argue, was man of the match. His timing to come inside the midfield worked well. A phenomenal goal. Very much involved in the game. Very much controlled the game. And not just Zinchenko, I think Tomiyasu was brilliant as well. And Tomiyasu's been quite consistently good for Arsenal. He's not a big name, And I see Arsenal fans that are always hyping up Saliba or Rice or Saka or Martinelli. They're never really hyping up Tomiyasu. But I think in terms of consistency, when I've watched Arsenal this season, I've personally been impressed. And I haven't watched all Arsenal's games, so if he is rubbish, tell me, Arsenal fans. But I've personally been impressed with Tomiyasu. I think that Arsenal's fullbacks were arguably the best thing about them today, from just a general perspective. I thought Saka had a decent game, got an assist. I think he's being overworked by Arteta and needs a rest. And I think if I was Saka, I would take a break from England. But I think Arsenal's fullbacks were probably most impressive today. And I think if I did a general summary of Arsenal, very dominant. Saliba, solid again. Rice, solid again. The reason I don't talk about Saliba and Rice anymore is that I'm so used to them being good. Like, I don't think I can think of a time Declan Rice had a bad performance for Arsenal, which winds me up. Like, tell me, Arsenal fans, because you've watched every Arsenal game, has there been a time where Declan Rice had a bad performance for Arsenal? Because I think him and Saliba, I'm trying to think of flaws in their game. Saliba got the goal. I think he made a bit of a mistake today, but he got the goal. Those two players have been phenomenal. And when I looked at Arsenal, I thought, didn't really get out of second gear, but won the game comfortably, dominated the game, controlled the game. If I was an Arsenal fan, I wouldn't complain. I think Trossard was fantastic. I thought Rice was phenomenal again. I think Saliba, Gabriel, the whole back line for Arsenal was great. David Raya had a decent game. I think, depth might be struggling a little bit with bringing on Vieira, Nelson, Eddie and Kior, but that is just because of injuries. But I think when you look at the injuries, you look at 27 points after 12 games, you look at the whole situation with Arsenal. I don't understand why some Arsenal fans aren't happy about the situation. I think because they were so good last season, maybe there was a higher expectation. But you're getting points, you're winning games, and for the most part, you deserve to win those games. Maybe you're not scoring 7-8 goals and playing this most free-flowing football, but with the injuries you have, I think Arsenal are playing well. And it does make me jealous as a rival, I won't lie.